just that's the other thing, is Johan and Vishal, if you see someone raise their hand, please let me know, because while I'm presenting, I can't actually see the rest of you. So I don't mind answering a question, but there are quite a lot of us. So as Johan said, if we could try keep those questions to the end, but if you think it's something that's really kind of pertinent to what we're talking about at that moment, I don't mind the interruption at all. That's absolutely fine. Okay, so we often like to call the guidelines the Right to Repair guidelines. Their official name is the Guidelines for Competition in the South African Automotive Aftermarket. You know, it's quite a mouthful, so I don't blame people for just reverting to the Right to Repair guidelines. It's great branding for us, so it's no problem there. But just so you know, that is the official name of the guidelines which govern all things right to repair in South Africa, at least to do with the automotive aftermarket. So why do we need the Right to Repair guidelines? You guys will probably know all these reasons because you're in the market, but for many years, manufacturers have seen the service and sale of spare parts as a major source of profit. You know, it was a market that they could trap. And then you don't necessarily have to provide very good service or parts. Well, I mean, parts, they have to provide good parts, but you don't have to provide very good service, and you can charge high prices and people don't really have a choice. And the way they managed to create this trap market was by restricting access to technical information so that the workshops couldn't actually work on in-warranty vehicles. Warranty restrictions saying that if you go to an alternative service provider or use alternative parts that are not branded original parts, that your warranty will be voided. Creating compulsory built-in service or maintenance plans, you know, saying you can't buy the vehicle without a service plan. And if you were to go to an ISP and you know, say you're happy to pay twice, to pay for the service plan and pay for your servicing, then they would have voided your warranty anyway. And then I think I mentioned this one already, but restricting the use of non-OEM branded parts and materials. So they kind of lumped non-OEM branded parts and materials and using an ISP in the same boat, that anything that's kind of not branded by them, it's not their branded workshop, it's not their branded parts, that is a big no-no, which is ridiculous. It's totally restrictive on competition and does not create a healthy economy. So we're very pleased that we're moving on from that. And that is where competition law and policy steps in to try and stop these kind of practices and allow for healthy competition to flourish. So the law is designed to create a level playing field where both big and small businesses can compete fairly and effectively. If we can implement these guidelines effectively, our South African automotive aftermarket will become a market where consumer choice is driven by the quality and price rather than the contract clauses and practices. So if you're running your business really well, you've got your price right, you've got your marketing right, now in this environment, you can actually do really, really well. So how did we come to the point that we're at now? Many role players in the industry, including the big automotive organizations such as TIPA, MIWA, Right to Repair, and actually even the OEMs and distributors, basically everyone in the market came together. Some were more in opposition, such as the OEMs, and then obviously some were for, but came together and lobbied for these guidelines to be drafted. It was realized early on that we have an advantage in South Africa, that we already have the Competition Act in place. And so these guidelines were built on top of the Competition Act. They were built, they were drafted in such a way as to be an explanation of how the Competition Act applies in this industry. I'll explain a little bit more on that later. But so after all of this discussion, the guidelines were drafted, they were published in December 2020, and they came into effect just over 2 years ago now, on the 1st of July 2021, much to the dismay of many OEMs who pushed back after this time to say, no, we're not ready. But luckily, the Competition Commission said, no, you've had plenty of time to get ready. These guidelines are in effect, and they have been enforced fully since the 1st of July 2021. So let's get into what the guidelines are actually all about. They are undoing all of those restrictive things that I mentioned earlier. And now consumers have the freedom to choose their service providers. They can choose where they service their vehicle, both in the warranty period and after. The important caveat to that is that by being able to choose their service, are no longer entitled to automatically void warranties for simply going to an ISP. If there is a problem down the line and the customer thinks that they have a factory fault and they take their vehicle to a dealer, the dealer at that stage is not allowed to look at their service book and go, oh, you went to an independent service provider. Nope, sorry, we are voiding your warranty. They have to, at that stage, do a full investigation, and which is at the OEM's cost, to find out what has caused the fault. If the fault turns out to be a factory fault, they have to honor the warranty. If it turns out that the independent service provider did actually make a mistake, or they used parts or materials that caused the fault, then the OEM is entitled to void that portion of the warranty. It's very important to remember that it's only a portion of the warranty that can be voided at that point. Only, you know, what is actually being affected. So, for example, if the engine has blown a gasket, and so they'll be allowed to void that portion of the warranty, but say body work or whatever else is under warranty would still be in place. Please excuse if I ever say the wrong thing in terms of technical details. I'm not a mechanic. I have come from a legal background. So if I said something funny there, just excuse it if you don't mind. In order for independent service providers to work on in-warranty vehicles, they have to record all of the work performed in the service. What is being done, and it helps them to figure out what's going on. They also need to have adequate commercial insurance in place. They have to have qualified mechanics. The guidelines don't state that that independent service providers need to follow manufacturer guidelines. However, we highly recommend that, and it almost goes without saying that the independent service providers must follow manufacturer guidelines, because otherwise there is a chance that they will do the wrong thing. And then lastly, ISPs must disclose to the consumer whether they have adequate commercial, I already said about the commercial insurance, but they must warn the consumer that there is a chance that a portion of their warranty might be voided if something goes wrong. But that would also be a good opportunity for the independent service provider to say, but don't worry, you know, if something were to go wrong, we have we have commercial insurance in place, and we will cover you fully if something goes wrong. We also just recommend that that line gets put into your general kind of terms and conditions when booking in a vehicle, so that it doesn't scare the customers too much. Now, in order for an ISP to actually get the chance to work on an in-warranty vehicle, we needed to also unbundle service and maintenance plans from the price of a vehicle. I did quite a few mystery shopper exercises myself, where I went along to dealers and said I wanted to buy a car, and then said, you know, what's included in the price. This was all obviously after the guidelines came into effect. I was checking that they were doing the right thing. And this was still early days, and many of the dealers were not compliant. And a lot of them would say, but no, ma'am, it's complimentary. And I thought that was quite hilarious, because clearly it's not complimentary and it's built into the price. And so now the OEMs need to provide those in two separate prices. So there needs to be the price of the service plan, the price of the vehicle, and then it needs to go further than that. The service plan needs to have a price breakdown as to the average cost of each service and the average price of parts covered by the maintenance plan or service plan, or whichever you choose. And you're also entitled to not purchase that service or maintenance plan or any other value-added product from the OEM. You are entitled to just buy the vehicle if that's what you want to do, which should still come with the same warranty. If OEMs are providing different warranties for people who buy service plans and people who don't buy service plans, that is not compliant with the guidelines, because that is another way of inducing people to not use a competitor. So if you hear of anything happening like that, please let me know. I think that covers that one. Okay, now this is probably the most interesting part for all of you, that consumers and workshops are entitled to use original or matching quality non-OEM branded spare parts. For example, oil filters in vehicles during the vehicle's in warranty period, and OEMs are not entitled to void the vehicle's warranty for doing so. So it's same thing as with ISPs. Customers are allowed to use independent parts. But we always say matching quality, because that shows that it's the same quality as what the OEMs are providing. It just simply doesn't have the branding. You know, it's got the warranties, it's got traceable origin, you know that it's a good quality part. It just, as I said, simply doesn't have the branding. These spare parts or materials do not required to be approved by OEMs. A good example of this is oil. A lot of people think that oils need to be approved by an OEM to be used. This is 100% not the case, but it is very, very important to use the correct spec of oil. I'm sure, as you all know, oil is actually a really technical material, and you've got to use the right one for the right engine. So while it's not a requirement for these to be approved, if you are comfortable that it is 100% the same oil as the branded one or the approved one, and it is the right one for that vehicle, that's no problem. It can be used. So yes, you've got to be careful, but it does not have to be approved or branded to be used. Same as with ISPs. If there's any damage to the vehicle as the result of using these matching quality spare parts, then there's a risk that provisions of the warranty relating to what has been the fault that's been caused by these parts may be voided by the OEM. Again, not entitled to void the warranty in its entirety, and they must do a full investigation at their own cost and provide evidence that this is what's happened. OEMs must also make available original parts to ISPs. Occasionally, you have to use an original part, and where those are needed by ISPs, they must provide those to ISPs. They can require ISPs to meet accreditation standards before providing access to security critical components, which is fair enough. And they may not restrict manufacturers of spare parts from placing their own logo on the parts they produce. For example, if they're producing a part for an OEM, which then goes to be branded by the OEM, they're allowed to produce the same parts and put their own branding on them as well, or white box, or whatever they want to do, basically. So what's in a name? It's very important that we focus on this, because we need to understand that, as I said, parts do not need to be OEM approved, but they do need to be matching quality. They do need to be good parts. So the guidelines define spare parts as replacement products for worn, defective, or damaged components or parts of a motor vehicle. Original spare parts, for purposes of these guidelines, are replacement spare parts produced by or on behalf or under the instructions of an OEM in accordance with specifications and production standards provided by the OEM, as well as those spare parts distributed by the OEM or any other authorized distributors of the OEM or marked with the trademark of the OEM. It's quite a mouthful, that. And then non-original spare parts for purposes of these guidelines are spare parts that carry a warranty from its manufacturer and are legitimate and traceable for the sale in aftermarket, but are not original spare parts. Non-original spare parts exclude counterfeit spare parts. So that's why we like to use the term matching quality, because it kind of encapsulates that whole definition of non-original spare parts in those two words, to say that it's as good as the original, it's just not the original. Because OEMs have used marketing very effectively to kind of give non-original parts this reputation of all being spare parts or pirated parts or counterfeit spare parts or grey parts or pirated parts. And so we want to change that narrative and explain to people that there's a huge quantity of parts that fall in the middle between original parts and grey and spare, grey counterfeit and pirate parts or stolen parts, you know, the bad parts that are dodgy and that don't have a good reputation. But we want everyone to know there is a middle ground that is more cost effective, but just as safe as original. So that's, sorry, I went a bit ahead of my slides here. And that's exactly what I've just explained there. So as together, as Johan mentioned, we've been working quite closely with TIPA to try and work through some PR posts, some PR articles, some social media posts. We've even got a video in production at the moment that is going to explain about spare parts, that you can use matching quality spare parts, and that you don't have to use original parts. And so we just want to make it very much known in the market that there's a large middle ground between original and grey and pirate parts. Which is where all of you. Yes, please go ahead.
Sorry, if I could just come in just while we're at this point, you know, because I think it's critical to our members here. You know, I mean, obviously these things that we're saying here around matching quality parts and things like that, you know, within your own businesses, we obviously, you know, appealing to you to also start using the same terminology. You know, a big part of it is the PR and the media campaigns and things that we'll do to try and educate consumers, you know. But when you've got consumers coming into your stores, we need to try and talk away from some of these legacy labels. You know, people talk about pirate parts and generic parts and aftermarket parts and that, you know. And as much as, you know, some of that terminology we're all used to it and we've been doing it for, ideally we want to start changing that narrative, like Kate says, to talking about matching quality parts. So when a customer comes in there and says, is it a pirate part that you're going to sell me? You say, no, ma'am, or sir, it's a matching quality part. And then by explaining to them that it's a credible part from a credible supplier with traceability and it carries the warranties. Yeah, and I mean, that really is what we're trying to say is a matching quality part. Look, if there's a real rubbish piece of, you know, part that, you know, you potentially trading with, you know, I mean, then that's where you put yourself at risk, you know, and we do understand that there is a little bit of dodgy parts and things in the market, but ideally, I mean, as TIPA members, we should be looking to drive quality parts through our business so that we can comfortably say these are matching quality parts and kind of put the consumer at ease. So like I plead to you all is to let's really start trying to use that narrative. You know, part of this also speaks to down the line when we go back to Competitions Commission on your behalf to try and kind of fight this whole OE trying to bully us and, you know, trying to discredit non-original parts because they like calling it non-original. We've moved away from that. But you guys using that terminology and the consumer getting used to this matching quality parts concept is only going to, you know, create much more momentum behind it, and it becomes the sort of accepted norm when we talk about matching quality parts. People will know it's quality parts that I'm not getting ripped off on. So yeah, sorry, I thought I'd just jump in there. It's important that you guys drive that message for us as well out there in your businesses and in your towns and all over the country, you know. Thanks, Kate.
Cool. Thanks, Johan. That was very valuable.
Sorry,
interlude.
Kate.
Okay, go ahead, Vishal.
Yeah, sorry, Kate. Just perhaps adding to that, I think, you know, the one thing that's real is people are driven by perceptions, and the word non-original, you know, drives the wrong perception, whereas matching quality, you know, gives it a better sort of identity. So I think that's important. And then secondly, Kate, I see there is a question in the chat box. Maybe we can address it now.
Sure.
I'll just read it out if you don't mind. We are a fitment center, not a workshop. We just fit items straight in and out. breaks, etc. We are fully insured. As I understand, there should be no issues with warranty, etc. Is there anything that we need to be wary of in place with regards to the dealer manufacturer warranty? And that's from Naileen Ramlakan.
Thanks, Naileen. So you just have to, it's the same principles will apply to you as to a workshop if you are fitting parts. You know, you've got to follow the manufacturer specifications in fitting those parts, do it the correct way, use quality parts so that they don't cause a problem. You're fully insured, so that's great. Just add into a service book if you need to. If it's not something you need to record, then don't worry about that. And just warn customers that if they're coming to you with an in-warranty vehicle, that there is a chance that their warranty may be voided if something goes wrong with the parts that you have fitted, because obviously the OEM has not fitted them. But you can also then reassure them that you will cover them in those instances. So there's nothing you have to really worry about. You just have to cover your clients or your customers if something does go wrong. Okay, I see there's another question while we just having a quick break. Okay, Naileen's happy with that. That's great. And then Mr. Naidu says, are we allowed to use OEM logos or names for advertising? This is a bit of a tricky one, because you must remember that OEMs logos and names are their intellectual property. It's their so you are entitled to say, we work on XYZ brands. You just got to be careful to not advertise yourself as being authorized by those OEMs if you're not authorized. And we have had an instance where a workshop took it a little bit too far. They used specifically one OEM's name and even put it in their own name, as part of their workshop's name, and used their logo like mad. And then they have been called out and had a lawyer's letter saying, cease and desist from using our brand. So it's a bit of like a gray area, but if you advertise that you're working on, several different brands with their logos, it shouldn't be an issue. But just be wary that you might, if you go too far, you might have an OEM breathing down your neck. So it's a bit of a gray one, that. I'm sorry, I don't have a clearer answer for that. Okay, I'm going to carry on and then we can do some more questions afterwards. So now, in order to work on these in-warranty vehicles, obviously you need to be able to access the latest technical information. So up until now, workshops have often relied on third-party information providers, such as Tech Alliance, Haynes Pro, and all of those to access information. But often this is slightly dated and generally applies more to the out-of-warranty vehicles. And so in order to get the latest up-to-date information that you need so that you don't make a mistake on the vehicle, that you do all the correct things and you now don't have an issue down the line where you've done an incorrect servicing or whatever, you have to be able to access this technical information. OEMs must also provide training to employees of ISPs who request training, and they have to provide all of this information and training on reasonable terms and conditions that are no less favorable to the terms offered to dealers and approved motor body repairers. This last section, although it sounds like it's been really fair, it's not actually that fair, because generally the terms that it's provided to the dealers is on an annual basis, and that is not something that is generally feasible for ISPs, because they often work on many different brands and need to be able to access the information, say on an hourly, weekly, 3 hourly, whatever, at a lesser cost. To pay that annual fee for every brand is just, it's not going to work. And so while the majority of the OEMs that we have managed to get information from as to how to access technical information are very much taking this into account and providing the option of hourly, 3 hourly, daily, weekly, monthly, and so on. to independent service providers for accessing this information. There's only one, and that is, what is the Jimny brand? Suzuki. Suzuki only wants to provide it on an annual basis, but because we haven't had any complaints from ISPs yet, we haven't managed to resolve that one. So if any of you have any complaints, let me know. But in general, OEMs are actually providing it on reasonable terms. Okay. So this is something that is often misunderstood, and wherever there is misunderstanding, that's where OEMs can exploit the situation. And so we would like you to understand this really, really well. And that's the enforceability of the guidelines. So the guidelines are not law. They are, as you would think, they are guidelines. They were created to assist those in the market and the public to understand how the Competition Act applies to the automotive aftermarket. Because legislation is generally drafted in very broad terms because it needs to apply to a lot of different areas, it's sometimes quite difficult for lay people to understand how to actually make use of that legislation without lawyers. And obviously, when you need lawyers to make use of legislation for everyday things, it's just not practical. And so that is why the guidelines were drafted, so that we can all understand how the Competition Act applies. This is actually extremely helpful because sometimes things are not specifically dealt with in the guidelines, but if they fall within the same kind of principles, you can say, well, this is not mentioned in the guidelines, but it makes sense that it also falls under the Competition Act. Now I've spoken quite abstractly there, so I'm going to give you a practical example. So for example, which is applicable to all of you, and this example is to do with accessories or modification parts. So vehicle accessories and modification parts are not actually mentioned in the guidelines, only spare parts. And we've taken the approach that it would be unfair to limit the use of non-OEM branded modification parts or accessories when you're allowing use of non-branded spare parts, because that's also limiting competition. And the Competition Commission has backed us up in this. There's been a few complaints that have been laid on this basis, and we've been backed up on that. And we laid those complaints squarely using the Competition Act. We used the principles that you can find in the guidelines and said it makes sense that in terms of the Competition Act, you should also treat modification and accessories parts in the same way as spare parts. There are a few aspects of the guidelines that are a little bit more aspirational, you know, nice to have, that's going to make the country a better place and that, but don't fall squarely within the Competition Act. And those are ones that we still need to test with the Commission to see whether they can be upheld or not. And those are those sections of the guidelines that relate to, for example, assisting historically disadvantaged individuals to have more access to the market. That is not squarely falling within Competition Act, but it's obviously something really important in the context of our country. And so that'll be an interesting one to see if we can enforce it. But all of those sections that I've spoken to you about today fall clearly within the Competition Act. And so you can feel quite confident in asserting your rights in them, and that you can proceed as if they are law, basically. I hope that makes sense. Okay, here are some case studies. We've published these on social media as well, if you'd like to have a look there. But these are things that have actually happened. I've just removed all identifying details because the customers didn't really want to go public with them. But it's useful just to see kind of what's happened in the real world. So one example is a customer had an issue with her aircon, and so she took her because it was still under warranty, she took it back to the dealer. I can tell you in this closed environment that it was Renault. She took it back to the Renault dealer, and they said, no, you have been to an independent service provider for a service, and so we are not going to honor your warranty. And they said they're going to void her warranty as a whole. They gave, I don't know how they couldn't justify that the independent service provider had done anything wrong or created a fault with the aircon. They just said you've gone to an independent service provider. As you can see, this was in 2021. It was early 2022, so it was still quite early days. Anyway, so we helped the customer to write a complaint, and this complaint didn't end up needing to be dealt with by the Competition Commission, because as soon as the complaint was laid, Renault said, oh, sorry, we will honor your warranty and fix the aircon. But it was that extra nudge of laying a complaint that is what did it. Because she stood up for her rights, she was able to get a resolution, which is great. Another one where we had an independent service provider who specialized, and it was Volvo, specialized in Volvo vehicles. And when they found out about the guidelines coming into effect, they immediately approached Volvo to try and obtain technical information. The OEM said the application of the guidelines was still in discussion. That relates to a letter that NAAMSA sent to the Competition Commission saying, X, Y, and Z of the guidelines, we can't implement those yet. And so Volvo was trying to rely on that delaying letter. And luckily, the Competition Commission backed us up in this and said that, no, the guidelines are enforceable. And so the OEM ended up providing this independent service provider with the technical information he needed. And then I was able to get the details of how to obtain that technical information as well. He kindly shared those details with me, and I was able to share it with all of our members as well, which is fantastic. So this relates to that example that I explained when I was explaining the enforceability of the guidelines, and that's the fitment of a matching quality accessory. So a man came along, he wanted to fit a tow bar to his new vehicle. I actually can't remember the brand offhand on this one, but he contacted the dealership where he purchased the vehicle to see if they had any stock. He actually tried to buy an original one first, and they didn't have any stock. And but not only did they say we don't have any stock, but they also said, but you're not allowed to go and buy the same thing from anyone else. So he thought that was quite ridiculous, considering they didn't even have stock themselves. He contacted a local independent supplier, it could have been any one of you, to see if they had stock of a tow bar of the same specifications, and they did. And he didn't want to jeopardize his warranty, so he first contacted me, and then I dealt with both him and the supplier, and we were able to get the dealer to agree that his warranty would not be voided, which is fantastic. So this one actually didn't end up going to the Competition Commission, but just by discussing it with myself and with the supplier, we were able to convince the dealer to do the right thing, which was great. These are some common misconceptions that we've come across. We've had quite a few people, haven't had it recently, but especially in the early days of the guidelines, we had quite a few people coming to us who had purchased a service plan or workshops that had customers who'd purchased a service plan and saying, well, now we have right to repair, we can work on those vehicles and claim the cost from the dealer. That's not how it works, unfortunately. Service plans can't be treated like medical aids. You know, you can't choose your service provider and then claim the cost. If you've chosen to purchase a service plan, you must take your vehicle to the service provider indicated in the contract. You cannot later elect to take your vehicle to an independent service provider and then claim the cost back. The only caveat to this is that if you are absolutely hating your local dealer and they've just done such a poor job that you don't care if you have to pay for your service again, I mean, this has happened before, which effectively means you'd be paying for your service twice, you are allowed to go to an independent service provider and have your service done without affecting your warranty. You're just going to end up paying for that service twice. But yeah, if you're absolutely hating your dealer, you can do that. ISPs are entitled to service vehicles that are still under warranty that were purchased prior to the 1st of July 2021, but only if they were purchased without a service plan or if the service plan has finished prior to the expiration of the warranty. Warranties can only be voided where there is a causal link. That's a bit of a legal term, but basically what it means is that the fault has to have been caused by either the part or the work done. You can't say you fitted a tow bar, your engine has blown up, you know, you fitted an aftermarket tow bar, your engine has blown up, now we're going to void your warranty. You know, there's absolutely no link between those two. And yeah, so there's got to be a link between the what is being caused and the fault. Workshops do not need to be a member with us, Right to Repair, or of any other organization to work on in-warranty vehicles. We constantly have emails from workshops saying, you know, please can I become a registered vendor, or, you know, variation of ways that they explain it, but thinking that they need to be registered with some kind of organization in order to work on in-warranty vehicles. The guidelines do not require this. We do recommend being part of either us. I mean, to be part of us is great because it means we have more funds to carry on doing this work and do this work more effectively, or to be a member of, in your instance, TIPA is great because you get all that support. Vishal and Johan would give you the full breakdown of what you get, but you know, that does also just gives you some kind of legitimacy, you know, that you're part of a greater organization and that you have to be you have to kind of adhere to their guidelines a bit. Another example is the MIWA 5-star graded system. You know, they've got this new system in place where they actually come and check your workshop to say, okay, your workshop has got all of these things in place. Okay, great, you get 5 stars. It just gives customers that extra confidence that your organization is legitimate and safe to use. That is often why it's just risk avoidance and giving yourselves more legitimacy by being part of organizations can only help you to gain those customers' trust and to lure them away from the dealers, so to speak. In a similar vein, there's no official list of approved parts or matching quality parts that are safe. However, we recommend that you only use these matching quality parts that are of traceable origin, manufactured by original component parts manufacturer, and where there's a warranty. So that's the parts you guys are selling. Please, please, please stand up for your rights. If you're confused about something, come to me. If you think that there is, that you've seen some kind of behavior or practices that are not complying with the guidelines, you can either go directly to the Competition Commission and lay a complaint, or if you're not sure how to do it, you can contact me at any time. These are the details. I will share these slides. I have actually shared this slide already with Vishal and Johan, but I'll share this whole presentation again so that you have these if you need it. It's got all the clickable links so that you can access these details. But we're not going to get full compliance with the guidelines if we don't have complaints. we don't know what's happening if people do not complain to us. As far as we know, then we think that everything is fine and the OEMs are all doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing if we're not getting complaints from you guys. So our latest developments in the market, we have joined forces with a number of other organizations to create a global position statement. And since then, I've also joined a working committee where I'm working with organizations from all over the world, Australia, Europe, Canada, South America, USA, all over. And we are busy creating something which I think is going to really, really help all of our organizations, where we are creating a kind of working document which explains to each country, explains the position of each country, kind of what their legal network is, where they are in the right to repair kind of part of the progress, you know, like what position they're in, have they got legislation in place, do they have just voluntary codes in place, what the situation is, problems that they've come across, loopholes that OEMs have utilized, so that we can all help each other and learn from each other and create a much stronger campaign all over the world. We also have a Competition Commission survey coming up. It was supposed to be with us at the end of June. Actually, it was supposed to be with us in November. But as much as I think the Competition Commission is fantastic, unfortunately, with regards to the survey, they have been a little bit affected by kind of general government organization problems, and it's just taking a lot longer. It took quite a while to get the tender out and to have someone awarded to do this survey. But it will come, I hope, and we would really encourage all of you to participate in this survey, because it's going to help the Commission to understand what is working in the guidelines, what isn't, who is complying, who isn't complying. It's going to give them a real kind of better picture of what is happening. The Commission to ensure that the guidelines are actually working. With regards to OEM and dealer compliance, the general trend is compliance, which is fantastic. One of our concerns is that we believe there's a little bit of lip service going on. You know, there was a couple of the OEMs that came out publicly in support of the guidelines a while ago, and then yet we are still getting tons of complaints against them. In reality, they're not. So it's something we're working on. Excuse me. It's a good thing I'm going to stop talking for a moment. These are just my details. If you ever need to get hold of me, my door is always open, so to speak. My email box is always open. I generally answer the phone as well if need be. And please feel free to contact me at any time. I'm always happy to discuss anything to do with right to repair and the guidelines. So I'm going to stop sharing that now and go back to the thing. And I'm going to just, if anyone has any questions, please go ahead. I'm just going to mute myself.
Yeah, Kate, there is a question there from Jay. Is it possible to get the various OEM contact details to acquire the information needed by our members?
Okay, what I can do is I will, well, actually, Vishal and Johan have this anyway, but I'm going to send it to them again. I have a document with all of the details as to how to access technical information. It doesn't cover every OEM, but it covers most of the big ones. And yeah, that's what we have at the moment. I have been trying to get a hold of a lot of them myself. They don't always respond. And yeah, but I will share what we do have, no problem.
Okay, fantastic. There's no more questions I see in the chat box, Kate. I've just got one or two points that I want to raise as well. The pushback from OEMs will continue, and I think that game we've seen, Kate, internationally. You will always get pushback from the OEMs. Yeah. So it's important when that does happen that you engage with, you know, ourselves or Kate so that we have some sort of, indication of where the pushback is happening from, and that we're able to deal with it. I think that's the one thing. And then the second point, the first recording, of course, is already on the website. This recording as well will be on the TIPA website. So should you wish to share this with your network, from an information point of view, by all means, please go ahead. The link is available. It's on the TIPA website, and you can access that at any time. Johan, over to you.
I see there's another question in the chat box.
Yes.
If a car comes in with a problem, diagnostics show fuel problem, a defective fuel pump needs to be replaced, how do I go from there? Excuse me, if it is a warranty issue, as in the fuel pump is covered by the warranty, then you should refer the vehicle to the dealer. Warranty issues should always be repaired by the dealer. You can't do it yourself and then claim the cost from the dealer. I hope that answers. If not, please feel free to write more.
Okay, well, yeah, look, on matching, okay, there's another one that just came through on matching quality parts. Wanted to create a loophole for OEMs if and when quality parts, in the ISP's opinion, fail. Look, I don't know if you want to answer this. On matching.
You can go ahead, Johan.
Okay, wanted to create a loophole for OEMs if and when a quality part, in the ISP's opinion, fails. Look, the onus is still on the OEM to prove it. So, all that rests with the OE to prove that there is an issue with a specific part, whatever the case might be. And even if it is found to be that it is of not a great quality, whatever the case might be, it's only limited to that part. So it doesn't affect anything else. So, obviously the OEs will always look at loopholes, and we all understand that they'll always try and manipulate any angle they can, whether it be this whole only genuine and be careful of, the deadly, backyard parts and whatever the case might be. They will always try and manipulate, I think, but I don't think on the matching quality parts it would create more of a loophole than what they would try to expose on non-genuine anyway. I think the matching quality parts, sort of terminology will just kind of position ourselves as spare parts providers and businesses using matching quality parts, that it actually eases the consumer's mind, and it's a little bit more direct and clear for the consumer in understanding, okay, so this is matching quality parts. It's not an OE part, but it's matching quality. I kind of have some confidence in this. And the fact that if anything does go wrong with it, or there is some, consequential damages caused by that part, that I'm dealing with a reputable dealer here that would, through their insurance, commercial insurance, be able to support me with any claim thereafter.
Johan, maybe if I could come in there as well,
sure.
just to add to that discussion, it's not uncommon for OE quality parts to fail as well. So it's
Sure.
not an uncommon practice, hence why product recalls take place, every so often. So it's not an inhuman practice that parts would fail, and if so, like Johannes pointed out, you've got your warranties in place, etc., that would support that position. So yeah, I think really the point around this is, it does not mean because it's matching quality that it is inferior. It may be of a better quality. Sometimes it's not necessarily the one that is sourced by the OE. If that helps, thank you.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, this should be backed up. The manufacturer warranty.
Yeah, I think that's the main point, is that parts fail, whether they are OEM branded, whether they're matching quality, whether they're whatever. Parts fail. It's how you as the supplier deal with it. Are you providing that back end support when things go wrong, because when it's an OE part that fails, the OEM has to replace it and has to deal with the consequential damage. And that is customers' concern a lot of the time, is that are they going to get that same level of support when something goes wrong? And if you show your customers that you are going to provide them with that support, you will take care of them if your part fails, that you believe in your parts so much that you've got good quality parts, that you will put your money where your mouth is and support them when something goes wrong, you're going to do really, really well, because then the customers will start to trust going to independent service providers or businesses such as yourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the real thing here, guys, is that we should always look to ethically deliver our services and our parts. We should be looking at sourcing good quality parts. You know, the cheap option to make a buck is inevitably going to bite you in the arse. So is to, you know, not look to find that cheap and nasty where you don't have traceability back to a manufacturer, that if it fails, it sits with you, you've got nowhere else to go. So I think those are kind of sort of the high level things that I would say there, is just really back yourself in terms of getting the right things. Please excuse me, need to hop off 100%. Basil, thanks for joining us. Great seeing you online again. And then Aileen, in my opinion, customers want the assurance that you will make sure that they are not going to have issues in the event that there's any. 100%
exactly.
To what Kate was saying there, yeah, and you're 100% right, Aileen, as well, is you instill that confidence in the client by, if anything going wrong, you support it and you know, you back up your workmanship and things like that. So yeah, absolutely. Okay, a lot of times where I could not get the backup from supplier, I'll take the knock. Well, you see, there's where the whole ethical business practice comes in play. So your supplier doesn't support you, you know, it's still your customer. You are the face of that transaction. So as much as your manufacturer or whoever you bought the product from, whatever, doesn't support you, yeah, unfortunately, you know, you might need to take the knock if you, obviously that supplier loses your business straight after that. So it's obviously not wise. And again, I think it speaks to just dealing with reputable people and decent, you know, tried and tested suppliers and service providers, so that it's an extension of your business as well then, you know. So yeah, thanks for the input. Appreciate it.
Yeah, perhaps a bit more on that one. You know, if you have that type of issue, remember the CPA and the likes have processes in place, you know, where you're not getting support from suppliers. So you need to perhaps explore those. Certainly at the RMI, we have dispute resolution that's available. So if you think that, you know, you're not getting the support of a supplier, you know, by all means, raise it through the channels. You also have the Motor Industry Ombudsman that's there. So you're well within your rights to take up those issues. I know sometimes it might be insignificant if it's a small amount, you know, for the process, but it's certainly, if it's a big amount, by all means, go through that process.
Yeah, and by all means, contact Vishal and the RMI team if you need any assistance going through that process as well. That's part of the benefits of membership here, you know, so that you've got somebody here that understands some of the legislation and nonsense that you have to go through sometimes. So you're not on your own, you know, you've got people that can guide you and assist you in that process as well. Yeah. Okay, I see it's gone sort of quiet, you know. As Kate has gracefully opened up the option, you are welcome to send any questions to her on the contacts that she provided, as well as, you know, through to Vishal and, you know, through the TIPA websites and things like that, or contact the office there with Mariki. Please do, you know, I mean, it's, you know, this is important for us to all understand, and I'm glad so many people did join, and I hope it was informative. And again, beyond that talk, you know, we're here, you know, there are people that can help and understand your plight and try and assist you through that. Rose asked the question, do we have a right to proper practical training?
You do. In the same way that you are entitled to technical information, you're entitled to the same practical training as the OEMs offer to their dealers. You have to pay for it, obviously, but but you are entitled to.
They won't be giving any of these things out so easily or for free, but yeah, they are obligated to assist. Yeah.
I do know of independents who have done training with OEMs as a result of these guidelines. So it's already happening. So if you do want to do that, inquire at your local OEM. And if they don't want to help you, let me know.
Good. Okay, awesome. I think, unless there's anything else, but as I say, if you didn't get a chance to ask the question yet, direct it at Kate or Vishal, and we'll do our best to give you feedback on that. I think thereafter we should probably close this meeting, and thanks everybody again for taking time out of your busy schedules. I hope everybody's in good health and business is going well for all of you. Good luck down wherever you are. And yeah, keep in touch if there's anything you need help with. And Kate, again, thanks very much for your time and very informative. I think it was very helpful.
My pleasure.
Johan, just a final parting shot there as well. Members, please be aware that later this year, September in particular, we're going to be at Automechanica, and the event we're hosting will revolve around the whistleblower hotline that we've created and potentially the formation of an industry compliance forum. The purpose of it is really to try and root out and deal with the illicit trade of parts that are in the market. So please look out for the invitations. It will follow soon. Something to look out for, and certainly support and join by attending the show at Automechanica. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, it's going to be an exciting one. So if anybody is able to come through, please do. I think we've got the details will go out between now and then. But yeah, we've got a really exciting panel set up for discussion around this. So thanks, everyone. And thanks, Nalin. Yeah, I appreciate that comment in the chat box there. Yeah, we'll keep doing our part. And please let us know if there's things that you guys are feeling out in the market where we can assist. Try that stuff at Vishal as well, even beyond this right to repair. Anything that we can do to help your businesses is what TEEP is all about. So please do. Okay, well, thanks, everybody. Great seeing you all, and good luck out there. Make lots of money, keep lots of people happy, and yeah, all the best.
Cheers, everyone.